Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Morgan Murray. Morgan, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Aaron, I'm so glad to be here.
You know, I was wondering how this was going to go. A guy from New York, a lady from Lexington, Kentucky. Accent is not so strong, but I'm sure it's going to come on very shortly.
Yeah, just wait.
And then I found out a very important piece of information. Your husband is from New York. Not real New York, but some New York. And we will take, us New Yorkers, we will take
what you can
whatever
get.
little bit of New York, except for his football preference. We will take whatever we can from this guy.
Yeah, no, I always say I married into my Bills fandom, and I have been pretty consistently disappointed. So I think I'm a true fan now, right? Like, I think to be a Bills fan, you have to be accustomed to suffering.
That's one of the most disrespectful things anyone has ever said to me on my own podcast. I'm a Jet fan, and you're telling me?
Oh, shoot.
And you're telling me about disappointment? You're telling me about failure?
Right.
Come on. How I'm not loyal listeners, I'm not sure we could continue this episode. I mean, come on. But anyway, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you probably going to Buffalo once or twice in your life, which is not a great thing. So hopefully you did that in the summer. I don't want to dwell too much, and I always encourage everyone to read the bio and touch on that. I don't want to dwell too much on what I'll call the first part of your story. But if you don't mind, and sometimes this podcast is emotional, sometimes we hit chords, sometimes the last episode I cried at the end. You mentioned, or your specialty is divorce financial planning.
Right.
Divorcee financial planning. And I imagine that there is a story there that involves, and I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Yeah.
Probably a divorce.
Yeah.
I know. Probably a divorce. And probably some bad or lack of planning.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
If it's okay, I'd like to ask you to begin there, take us there, take us after the story, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
To the moment where you realized that you could turn that you had to, not could, but you had to turn that into what you're doing now and how you're doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm totally an open book. And I think something I've learned in this line of work in particular is that authenticity breeds trust, hopefully. And so my clients generally, when they ask, I'll share my story, and wherever, it can help somebody else. And so, yeah, I was married young the first time, 22 years old, the day I graduated college. It was maybe not my finest timing. And nobody gets married planning for divorce by any stretch. And full disclosure, I have an English degree in technical writing. I did not intend to go into finance. And
People in Kentucky
I would
speak
say
English.
What's that?
People in Kentucky speak English.
Oh, it's starting early.
Sorry.
Like some literature, okay?
Loyal listeners, she started with the Jets. She went there.
Okay, we're even, right. And to be honest, I chose that degree thinking I would go to law school. And I always joke because I read one book about what it was like being in law school and said, no, thanks. And so, got married young, was married for about 4.5 years. And in that time had my daughter. And so right at that mark, I guess it was around 4 years, and she was 10 months old, my marriage ended. And that decision arguably was mine, but of course I won't go too much into it. But as any woman who has ever chose to leave her marriage with children can probably attest to, it's not usually the first option. It's about the 50th, right? Or the 100th, whatever reason or decision to kind of try to move forward. And so to your point, I did not plan to, I didn't go straight into this line of work afterward. I spent some time being a single mom and figuring things out. Now, I always joke that the best time to get divorced is when you're both broke because there's not much to lose. And so again, this is not the case with the bulk of my clients that I'm working with. They're walking away from a lifetime of intertwined finances. But I will say it was a time for me of truly living. I was working nonprofit at that time. Every single penny I spent mattered and was the difference between the meals I ate at night. Just to be totally frank, if I'm eating like hummus and crackers over my kitchen sink versus going out with friends, so that I was living that paycheck to paycheck life and realizing that I also wanted to save. Now, my mom has been in this industry for a long time, but it was not part of the kind of the rhythm of my upbringing to be.
Can you just tell us what that industry is? When you say your mother was in that industry?
Sure. She's a financial advisor.
Okay.
But she was an office manager in that industry first and became an advisor about 10 years ago. So saw her kind of make that career jump later in life. And all that to say, it's like I still was having to teach myself every step of the way and start fresh and rebuild. And so I would say that it was at the moment that I decided to pursue this job, being a financial planner. I had remarried at that point, and I have to give, and anybody who is an entrepreneur understands that, and especially women, you can correct me, but I think women, especially jumping into an entrepreneur type role, if they don't have some kind of backup plan or stable support at home, for me, it was a W-2 earning husband that allowed me
From Buffalo.
From Buffalo.
From New York.
He's an HR guy.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you realize you marry someone from New York, you realize you have automatic, like, your life has taken a positive turn that you never dreamed of.
It's
okay, great. I'm just making sure. Yeah. Like, you would not have the practice or the confidence that you have today. It's not just you have a supportive spouse. He's from New York. Like, you married a New Yorker. Okay, great. Okay, I'm glad we established that.
I'm good. Right.
I want to ask you a question about that.
Sure.
I'm interrupting you, but I want to. No. You said something to me before we went live, which was incredibly powerful. I'm sure you used it before. Every marriage ends, right? Every marriage ends. I saw a meme the other day that said that if you have two siblings, one will bury both, one will bury none. Right?
Right.
That's life. I mean, we can lie about the realities of life, but we're not going to help the listeners or ourselves move forward. Mm-hmm. So understanding the reality that you're saying, that all marriages end. That's true. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm just wondering, you speak to people before they get divorced, after they get divorced, when they're still happily married. Someone calls you and says, hey, I think this is going south. What do I need to do to prep? Like, I am just fascinated by this because I'm in the risk business. So I believe that everyone needs to protect themselves and their risk. But prenups are prenups. But after that, I'm pretty sure that financially preparing for divorce is not a great measure of long-term relationship success.
Right. So I intersect with people at every single stage that you just listed. And I have the capacity to serve them at those various steps, and the needs are very different. To your point, I had that conversation last week. She says, hey, I think it's over. I think things are going to start going south, and I don't know anything about this relationship financially. Where do I start? Right. So that's sometimes the question.
But don't you think, first I want to say, I think what you're doing is amazing. I think that turning a difficult situation into something positive is always the way to go. And it is actually the definition of keep hustling, because it's saying that we're not going to let those negative things that happen to us in life get us down. My aunt, she should live and be well, is 90 years old. She was my father, he should rest in peace, older sister. She's an incredible lady. She got divorced and felt that she got the short end of the stick in the court system.
Yeah.
So do you know what she did in her 40s with 3 children? She went to law school.
Love that so much.
And this woman, you should meet her. Everyone should look up. Shout out to Aunt Sandy, Sandra Rosenblum. You guys should all look her up just because she's a bad woman in the best possible way. My father's older sister. She rocks, Aunt Sandy. And, she obviously took a very difficult situation and made it something positive. It's a great story. She graduates law school at the same time that her youngest child graduates medical school. So it's like a fascinating, amazing hustle and grind. But not to take away your field, or not to knock your field, or not to put your field into, delete it from careers and make it not a thing. Shouldn't people just be financially literate and financially sound and not allow themselves to be ignorant from the beginning?
Yeah. And I think that that's why.
What I'm saying is I understand that people don't. And therefore, that's why I'm happy. Mm-hmm. And they should be happy that a service like yours exists. But if you didn't get a traffic ticket, you wouldn't need a lawyer who if you weren't if you didn't get a DUI, you wouldn't need a lawyer who specializes in DUIs. So if you're just smart about not drinking and driving, that lawyer shouldn't have a job. So I believe that you probably have a unique perspective on financial planning, but it really should be young couples before they get married. Both sides should be sitting down with you and saying, hey, obviously, and I'm not, and by the way, I'm married, thankfully, for 15 years and happily married, and there's a delegation of responsibilities, and usually the finances are on one side or the other.
Yes, right.
But there's a big difference between I happen to handle the credit card bills, but my wife knows everything. She she puts the kids to bed and I handle the finances. But that doesn't mean, like we always talk about, this, God forbid something happens.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of difficult things.
Yep.
But the word ignorant wouldn't appear. So I want to go to, like, because this gets to my keep hustling and like why people are just, I think that a lot of people in 2026 are voluntarily pained or voluntarily, I don't want to say stupid, but you know what I mean?
Ostrich effect. This is what I call it, the ostrich effect. They stick their head in the sand because it's like, I'd rather not know.
But like we have the internet, we have ChatGPT, like every young couple or any person who's working, making money, not making money, getting married, has a bill, is getting a mortgage. Like, so why do you think people get there? And like, what can we do to inspire people not to be stupid, for lack of a better term?
I think it has to be, I mean, it's kind of a trite answer, but it has to be communication. There has to be business meetings in your marriage. I will just say out of the gate. And I think a lot of the women, especially, and now I work with men as well. So don't like, this is not, there's a lot of, let's say, rage bait around divorce finances and like, you know, people that are like, oh, you only want to take the guy's money, all that crap. No, none of that. That's not the way I approach this business. I want to equalize the playing field from, like you said, an awareness and education standpoint. So a lot of times I have women in particular who come into marriages where the spouse is maybe high earner, a level of complexity. Maybe he starts a business. So to your point, I think both of them have a responsibility to say, hey, babe, here's what's going on and here's what it means. Now, I think it should work both ways, right? Like if you didn't know what medications your kid was on, if something happened to your wife that you're not able to continue care, right? You can apply that, I think, that standard practice across the board of roles in a marriage. So I think that is one way to avoid the ignorance.
And I think that if it's not, I would say that's a red flag. As a father of 5,
100%.
meaning again, and obviously people can be, and there are bad people in the world and evil people in the world and people that do bad things and people can hide things and lie and do all those things. But let's just assume that the average marriage begins with a certain level of honesty.
Yeah.
When it begins with that level of honesty, if a person is not willing to, honesty means I won't lie to you. But if I'm also not willing to expose you.
Yeah. Or withhold. Right.
Meaning, but it's hard to know what a person is withholding. That's my point.
Yeah.
But if a spouse asks questions, like my wife knows, you know, I'm a 2nd generation insurance agent. She unfortunately knows more about insurance than she'd like to. But obviously there are nuances about my business. And either she's an occupational therapist, and nuances about her business that I don't understand.
Yep.
But I know that she's an occupational therapist and that she makes a certain amount of money and she knows, she knows what I make, and our tax return, we go through it together and we go through all these things. And I feel like the start of this conversation, even though we're 13 minutes in, is if your child or you are contemplating a relationship with someone who is not forthcoming with that information, again, if they're going to lie to you, I'm even willing to grant that as they're a bad person, they lied to you. But if you try to have the conversations and they're not willing to have those conversations, that should be a red flag. And people should, and one of the things that we should be doing is encouraging young people to have these conversations.
100%. And then build it into the rhythm, the cadence of your life, right? Because you're going to look up in the trenches of raising a family and be like, oh crap, wait, what's happened? And everybody's doing their own thing. And again, and unsurprisingly in my marriage, I am the CFO, right? I am the one who is now, he has certain things with the credit cards.
He does from Buffalo. So like, you know, he's not a real New Yorker. If he's a real New Yorker, like he would be the CFO.
I can't wait to go home and say, babe, we talked a lot about you in this conversation today.
No, what I'm saying is, but the point I'm making is, it's not like your husband asked you a question about the personal finances. You're the CFO, right? It's like the CEO. The CEO is not the CFO, but if the CEO wants the information, the CFO's got to give the CEO the information.
Yeah.
And the employee who's in the accounting department also has to have it.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm bringing this up as it relates to this podcast in particular, and the idea of keep hustling, is that very often I've been privileged in these conversations to talk about how people can keep hustling, how people can keep pushing themselves forward. And learning about you and speaking to you, and then the next place I want to take this conversation is, it's really hard to keep hustling if you have a huge derailment.
Yeah.
And I've spoken many times on this podcast, and many of the people who have inspired our listeners have said, life has bumps, but there's a huge difference between a bump or highway traffic and your car breaking down on the side of the road and you having to walk.
Yeah.
And I feel like finances and these type of challenges can completely destroy someone.
Yeah.
To the point where they're not stuck where they are. They're way back where they were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. And so I think attitude matters. And this is something my husband and I both are on our 2nd marriage. And we have just acknowledged, like, hey, when we go through crap, it can either make us better or bitter, period. And so for us, and I think for me at that phase of my life, yeah, I was having to rebuild. But to your point, I was in my late 20s. Everybody's figuring crap out still at that point. So, but now of course, the bulk of my conversations I'm having with women who have been married 25 years are, like you said, really don't just feel like they're starting this fresh new life, but they're going back and having to really create a new foundation. But what I will say, and is that people all the time, when I say I work mostly with divorce, they're like, oh, it's so depressing. It's not. It's incredible to see the resilience and the dedication to saying, this is not the end of my life. And reality is, if a marriage ends after that many years, it's either, to your point about risk, it is not typically expected, especially for women maybe that have stayed home and like managed the house for X number of years. It is decimating from a financial standpoint, but they also see it as an opportunity to push forward and create a life for themselves that is something they wouldn't have had access to otherwise. So yeah, I don't know if that answers.
But wouldn't it be exponentially easier if they were just, again, like, I talk about this with insurance and planning all the time, and forgetting about this side of practice, even in standard financial planning, you have to have a certain level of understanding.
Yep.
And this may sound wrong, and I apologize to you and to the listeners if this comes out incorrectly, and we'll work through whatever I was trying to say. I'm the host. This is not supposed to happen, but whatever. Like, at a certain point, it's like sometimes the victim is at fault. Mm-hmm. If a person decides that they want to be ignorant, it's terrible, and they don't deserve to be victimized. That's not what I'm saying. And someone doesn't deserve to be mistreated. But nobody who is of sound mind, marginal intelligence, should be totally ignorant of their finances, just like they shouldn't be totally ignorant of their health.
We are all villains and victims in our own story, okay? Right? We acknowledge that in every probably facet. And so to your point, that is why a lot of the conversations I have carry a lot of shame, because there is recognition, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do? All we can do is move forward and make changes. But yes, to the women right now who are in the middle of a very happy marriage hearing this, or the men for that matter that are not the CFOs, do your due diligence. Take a second, take time to understand how your bills are paid, understand if you're freaking saving enough. Where's your risk management? All those things. I think, again, that's why financial planners, we will stay in business, because if nothing else, we help give peace of mind to audit your entire financial life and say, hey, major red flags here, blind spot over there, and bring it all together. So I think, yes, I do agree. Right. It sounds a little harsh, and I wouldn't be the lead-in conversation with a woman whose 25-year marriage is ending. But I think that is why I love what I do, because they a lot of times already are there and understand that and say, okay, I want to do something differently from here on out.
Your bio. I pick a line from the bio, and then I'm going to ask you for some quick tips.
Okay.
I'm going to read this, and I quote, I jumped into a financial advising career with very minimal guarantee it would work. I'm going to ... I had no choice, period. I'm about to say, you're nodding. I, quote, burned the ships, end quote, no turning back. Take us to that moment. That is Keep Hustling.
Yeah, there was no plan B. Starting this, and I don't know if this is a personality flaw, curse, privilege, or whatever, but when I go in, I go all in. And so for me, now I would, the caveat being what we discussed earlier, I had income coming in, right? My family was fed, but I knew I would do whatever it took to build a business that was sustainable and fit the life that I wanted to lead, because I'd already started to build a life prior that was not for me, was not what I wanted. And so I'd already tried that out, right? Fitting into somebody else's box and definition of what a good life was. And I said, screw that, right? See, I almost used my go-to F word there, but I don't want you to have to go through the bother of beeping me. But yeah, I said, I don't want to live that way anymore. That was kind of the mindset.
Can I ask you the top 3-5, either things that people should do or shouldn't do when they're young and thinking that one day they might want to get married, and when they are newly married? Take me from 18 or 20, graduating college, whatever. But because I feel like a lot of this conversation begins before the relationship.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I think it's maybe not true that you have to have all your financial ducks in a row to be able to healthily move forward in a young marriage, right? I don't care if I see people figuring it out together and married, but I think, like I said, being able to communicate regularly and having that rhythm built in. So, and then also then if you're alone and not in a relationship tracking toward marriage, being aware, taking time to understand your paycheck, taking time to understand how your insurance functions, being curious. One of my big things is that to stay curious, right? And even in, again, our line of work, I think curiosity is a measure of care. But in your own life, if you don't take time to ask the question, you're never going to have an answer. And again, you might be in 25 years in some hot water having a conversation with me, figuring out what just happened. So I think that's the biggest thing that comes to mind.
I also think, sorry to interrupt, but I also think that knowing which ducks you don't have in a row is a thing, right? Like knowing, hey, by the way, I have a lot of student debt, or knowing that I want to become a doctor. I'm going to do it like, and I understand that therefore it's not together. My stuff is not together. But I'm not going to say that it is together when it isn't. And I'm also not going to say that it isn't together when it is.
Right.
And I think that that's, I try to stay away from politics. I'm not going to get into the student loan thing. I'm not going to get into whether college is worth it or not worth it, or 4 years, all that. But the ramifications of those decisions, getting a degree, not getting a degree, taking on debt, not taking on debt, going to graduate school, not going to graduate school, getting married before you're in college and after you're in college, when you're in grad school, not when you're in grad school, having a kid when you're in all of those things. Like, I remember, you just reminded me that when, I don't know what it was like in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, but we had this thing, it was called COVID-19. It was a virus.
We had it. Yeah. Right. It hit us.
And New York was pretty serious. New York City was pretty serious. And I remember saying, my wife and I sitting down, I'm going to be totally honest, over a serious beverage. We had 4 children at the time. 1 was not in school and 3 were going to be in this, Zoom school thing.
Yeah.
And I don't remember which one of us said it to the other. She's much more, wise than I am. So probably her. We don't know what this is. Nobody knows what this is. But like, we're in it together, and like whatever rocks, the boat's rocked.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring that up is knowing that the boat is rocking is also valuable. You don't even need to have the solution. But I feel like a lot of times especially in these types of financial conversations, one person thinks everything is great. The other person is sitting there saying everything is terrible.
Yeah.
And that's what creates the friction, when at least if we both know it's terrible, if we both know we're struggling, we both know we need this to work out, or it's not working out, or we both or if this works out, the finances are going to go in this direction. If it doesn't, it doesn't, or it's going to be a rough 6 months, whatever. Like, just knowing that knowing that it's falling apart is also great.
Right. And relationship, but then having the vision on the other side is, what does calm waters look like, right? What does that feel like for us? And having that awareness in yourself, and then being able to enter a relationship where you can kind of find out, that can be a deal breaker, right? If their vision of financial independence, which is kind of is the new retirement, right? It's like, what does financial independence look and feel like? If you all are in 2 separate universes of that, like, that can be, I don't know, just that can create some awareness. And I think if you're comfortable enough at that point, like I said, before you're actually committed and married to a person, like those, and even if you are, right, it's never too late to have those conversations. So to your point, so having a reality check over and over again is vital. At least I see what happens when they don't, I should say.
What did we miss?
Man, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, there is something I thought about with keep hustling. The concept is that even there is a reality in this line of work where I am building this plane as I'm flying it a little bit, not to mix too many metaphors, but I think that is what has been so exciting for this. And I would just say, if anybody is in the financial industry looking to dive into a niche, it's a terrifying thing to do. And I am so glad I did, because it has just brought this new purpose and honestly opportunity for learning that I never would have had otherwise. I went independent as well. My story, I started with a large national brokerage firm and joined an independent team that allowed me to do this work. And that was, again, the most terrifying, I always say, outside of getting divorced, leaving that company.
You did it again. You're like, I'm doing it again.
Man, yeah. No, it was terrifying. So I just would say that to anybody in this,
But you were able to do it because you had a New Yorker behind you.
You got it.
Okay, good. I'm glad we established that.
Yeah, I'm in. You're good.
Okay, cool.
Good victim.
Thank you for the insight. I really appreciate it. As you know, we have a closing tradition on this podcast that we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational or inspirational quote. And with that, I'm going to say, Morgan Murray, thank you again for being here.
Yeah.
And the floor is yours.
Everyone wants to be great until they realize what greatness demands. and I might be fudging it a little bit, but that's from Joshua Medcalf, my most favorite book, and my husband's. He reads it every morning with his Bible, is Chop Wood, Carry Water. Super small, straightforward, easy book. I go back to it, right, to check the road signs along the journey when things feel hard or isolating, or just when I start to question myself, I go back to that. And that it's the mundane, right? It's the mundane practice of being great that actually gets you on the other side. So that's kind of my go-to.
Thank you. Morgan, this has been awesome.
Thanks, Aaron.
Send regards to New Yorker husband.
I will.
Tell him he's got a friend in me.
Okay.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good, and of course, and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.